No, that's fine, Richard. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It would be great if everybody's all right that we could all see your faces. So I know some people are a little bit shy on a Thursday morning, but if we could see faces, that'd be great for those who are able to. Obviously, check your hair and your backgrounds first. So I've been involved in health and safety for probably more than 30 years now. So um, not so much always in the utility sector. I had a role with Amey for 2.5 years or so as the HSEQ Director for the utilities business. But obviously in mainstream construction, we come across utilities an awful lot. So that's me. I've also got the support, which I'm greatly appreciative of, with Rob Kelly. So Rob's the HSE business partner who works for Water South within Amey. So we'll say hello to Rob. If there's any further introductions, Rob, from yourself.
No, good morning, everybody.
So Rob is still with Amey. I left them at the end of September and awaiting my next challenge, as it were. So just recovering from an knee operation and few things in the fire, shall we say. So Richard, I'll take control of the slide if that's all right. We'll run through a few bits and pieces. So we're hoping that we'll keep you engaged. We're hoping that we'll share some things with you, and probably more so than this, I suppose. It's about reflection. It's about you having a look, see what we did, to see whether or not there's any benefit for everybody else, but also as well if there's any further thoughts, if we can develop the conversation on. So I'll just put this onto the screen, and then hopefully everybody can see this. So one of the key things for me then really is making sure that we know the importance of your audience and you engage with the audience in the way that you want to. So first of all, then really, one of the questions I'd ask, and if people could use the hands that they've got, it would be good for us to know, I suppose, really who we're talking to. So just 4 very simple questions. So first of all, those of you who may work in a contracting organisation. Okay, those of you who may work on the client side, as it were. Those of you who may, in their job title, be operational. And those of you who, should we say, would have a safety role, may see themselves as a safety leader, safety advisor, etc. Just so that we've got a bit of a view in relation to who we're talking to. Okay, thank you for that. And then one of the other things then what we'll do, and I'll come back to that in a second, is just a little bit about engaging with the audience and trying to make sure that there's a communication, that we kind of encourage people to talk, and we get people smiling first thing in the morning as well. So I'll come back to that in a second. We'll then go on to talk about why we chose underground services as a key communications aspect. How we went about it, which I think is the key thing really. We'll spend some time about that, and that's really the element of where we can focus in on with the sharing of the learning that we're talking about. The results so far, Rob will talk more about that. Obviously, he's still involved very much with Amey, and then we'll open it up then as regards questions, discussions, and shared learnings, etc. So hopefully no more than 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but the idea there is to get as many people talking as possible. So I'm just going to come out of the presentation for a second. And we talked about engaging with people. So lots of health and safety people obviously would receive an induction. So I'm quite keen as well that we all receive an induction this morning. So I work from what I call the Four Oaks office. So we're all working from home, etc. So I just wanted to take you through an induction, because you're all visiting the first Four Oaks office probably for the first time. So parking, there's plenty of parking space outside the house on the driveway, but there is a requirement here to reverse park. Second thing as regards entry, if you just ring the front doorbell and leave your shoes in the porch, please, so that we're not damaging the floors of the car or the carpets. From a security aspect, the head of security, I'll be taking him to the park in about an hour's time. So he's still around. You may hear him during the morning as he completes his rounds and make sure that there's nobody coming into the premises that we don't want them to. Toilets, we've got toilets downstairs and there's a couple of toilets upstairs as well. There's hand sanitizer in there if anybody needs them. So that's all available for you. First aid, should you have any injuries on today, please take yourself outside and put yourself in the roadway. We don't want any injuries here. But the other thing as well is my wife's a trained paediatric nurse, so I'm sure she's able to cope with many, if not all, of the people on the call. There's no fire drill today that's planned. But if there is a requirement to leave the premises, then we'll leave via the west wing. If you walk past the tennis courts, over the bowling green, and you assemble near the servants' quarters, that'd be the right place where we've got the muster point. If there's anything at all that while you're visiting us that you feel as though could be improved on, be that decor or be that layout, I'll hand you over to my wife. I'm sure she'd be very, very interested in taking your views. And finally, as well, if you do need a drink while you're here, please help yourself. The kitchen is available as teas, coffees, and various other bits and pieces. All of the domestic staff have been furloughed, as you could imagine, so you'll have to make drinks for yourself.
There's also the request for the bacon sandwiches as well, Gerry.
There is indeed, yeah. So one of the reasons for doing that, hopefully, is just to wake people up in the morning, and because we've all been through inductions and they can be a bit tedious and a bit boring. So sometimes when you're communicating with people, it's vitally important to make sure that it becomes relevant and you engage with them. So sometimes it's not about the message that you're sending out, but it's more important about the message that's being received. So I take people through that, just some of these sessions, just to make sure that we wake people up in the morning and get them smiling more than anything else. So hopefully you appreciate that and take it in the manner that it was meant. So we'll go back into the slides then, hopefully. So underground services, then we chose as a key communications aspect within Amey. And when I landed within Amey, I'd probably have been there about a week or so. Very, very clearly, very crisply, you could see that there were three key elements of risk that we had to control. One was around the supply chain, which no doubt we'll talk about as we talk through the communications with this. Second one then was around road risk, given the amount of mileage that people drive on a daily aspect of the work that they were doing and the large workforce that we had. And then thirdly, obviously, was avoidance of underground services. So that was one of the key things that we had to look at. We'll then talk about how we went about it, the results so far, and the lessons that we'd learned, and the questions, etc., as well, that we'll pull through. Well, first of all, though, I'd just like you to start thinking a little bit and wondering whether or not people can finish these sentences. So there's no prize that's available for this. So I'd just like to give you a couple of minutes each, and if you can write them down next to where you are, or just have them in your head, etc. We'll just do a little bit of, what can you remember? If you can finish the sentences, and or because. Second one, stay home. Some people are on pitch. Only a fool breaks. Listen very carefully. See it, say it. And then hands. And then two at the bottom, pew, pew, Barney McGrew. And then we've got McGinn. So I'll just give you a minute or two to try and go through those sentences.
I can't remember them all. Are you showing them? Can you show them? No.
Can you see the screen at the moment?
Yeah, but it's still got introductions and the importance of knowing and engaging your audience. So I can't remember all of those that you've read out. Sorry. Am I the only one that's lagging?
No, I can't see it either. I can see that.
Yeah, still on the first slide.
All right, can you see that slide?
Nope.
So let me just try and share the screen again then.
We are still eating the bacon sandwich.
I just thought my memory was really bad. I thought there was going to be like 3. I'm like, I can cope with 3, but then it carried on. So then that was it.
I've not got past security yet.
There'll be a reason for that. So let me just come out of this then. And I'll try and go back in. Richard, have you still got these slides if I'm struggling with it?
Okay, yeah, bear with me. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I got it, Rich.
Apologies for that. I think there was probably a breakdown in communication between the chair and the screen, I think, at my end. So there are 9 there then. So who thinks they've got 7 of the 9? Just a show of hands. More than 7? Anybody think they've got 9? Okay, so I won't labour this point too much, but if we just go on to the next slide then, Richard, you can see what we've got just to make sure everybody's okay with everything. So you'll remember these either from your long-term memory or recently that you will have heard some things, and there's a couple of very pertinent ones there at the moment. So stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives, hands, face, space, that you'll hear from the coronavirus perspective, and then there's some others as well that you may have remembered from your childhood. And then the one at the bottom then, unless you're an Aston Villa fan or a Hibernian fan, you probably won't have got that one. So that's John McGinn. So Super John McGinn is the song that they sing on the terraces. So as one of the players of the side that I support. So there's all of those things hopefully that will have jogged your memory, or you will have been able to recall from your long-term memory. And if we just look at the next slide then please, Richard, it's just about how you've recalled that memory. So you may know that you have a sensory memory, you've got a short-term memory, and you've got a long-term memory. And the longer that you go without thinking about things, and the longer that you go about reminders, means that things can drift away from your memory. So, for example, Pew Pew Barney McGrew, if you're of a similar age group to me, that came from Trumpton, which was a child's program from a number of years ago. And apologies those of you who are an awful lot younger than me that may not know that one, but everybody will know. Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over, but that's a long time ago. That was 1966, but occasionally it comes up every now and again, but it's one of those things that sticks in people's memory. So one of the things that we wanted to do from a communications perspective around underground services was to make sure that we kept everything as close as possible in people's sensory memory. All right, so if you keep it in people's sensory memory, the idea then is that we can make sure that it's always available to them. So that's the theory behind that in relation to how people remember things and how the memory duration. So what we came up with then very, very simply is a simple formula that again was used, and I saw around British Transport Police, and they had a very simple slogan that said "See it, say it, sort it," and this was around anything at all from a threat perspective that you may see from a security perspective. But that had 3 very, very simple messages. And the government are doing the same thing now as well. They're talking about hands, face, space. They're talking about stay at home, save lives, protect the NHS, etc. So very, very simply, they're looking at 3 messages. And this has been seen from lots and lots of studies that's been done at the right things in order for people to remember. So if we just go on then, Richard, onto the next slide, and we'll talk about what we actually did. And some of you may have seen this around, we've talked about locate, mark and avoid, 3 very, very simple words. And what we didn't do is we didn't reinvent everything that HSG has already got. We tried to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. And I remember being 9 and 10 years of age and playing representative soccer local to me. And the sports teacher that we had there was a guy called Mr. Smith. And he used to shout KISS at 9 and 10-year-olds, which was quite off-putting in many ways when you're developing as a child. But KISS stood for keep it simple, stupid. And he was trying to get us to pass the ball and move. And that's all that he wanted us to do. So very, very simply, what we didn't try and do was overcomplicate what we were doing. We kept this very, very simple. And we just talked about locate, mark and avoid. The symbol that you can see there, everybody will recognize. So from an electrical perspective, and it was all around avoiding strikes. So we pulled together a communications plan. We knew who the target audience was, and this was aimed at the workforce. It wasn't aimed at the supervisors. It wasn't aimed at the line managers. It wasn't aimed at the surveyors. It was aimed at the workforce. It was aimed at the guys who were actually digging the holes, the people who were going to get hurt. So we made sure that we knew who the target audience was. We got leadership support for this, and this was actually launched at an Amey Utilities Top 100 session, whereby simultaneously, as we were talking to them, there was a communication that was going out to all of the line managers as well. We gave away stickers, we gave away posters, there's a video that goes with this. So there's lots and lots of information that we had that was being delivered out to people. The other thing as well that we spoke about from a communication perspective is we talked to the workforce about how would they like to be engaged with. So rather than giving them lots of regulations and another copy of HSG 47, sending them via email a procedure, you know, for them to read and to follow, we kept it very, very simple. So we used videos, we used very simple slides that they wanted, and this is the type of information that we got the feedback from them. This is the way that they want to be communicated with. We included it in all of the new inductions that were coming through, and that's still the case now. And Rob will talk a little bit about the briefings to staff and the supply chain. So Rob, do you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, so essentially what we did is we made the key thing of engaging with the supply chains and understanding, because the risk was with them, not with the Amey employees directly, because obviously the supply chains are out there actually on the shop floor doing the work. So if we go back to the short-term, long-term memory, it was a case of we supplied all this information to them. We provide them with all the tools to do the job, and we were trying to understand why were they choosing not the equipment provided in its full capacity. In case of the managing directors of these companies of our supply chains and working with them, so that was the role we took from that point. And rolled it out with them. And what we did from that perspective was we used the USAG charter, and by using the USAG charter, we adopted that to work within the frameworks that we're working within Severn Trent, for instance, and they took ownership of that. And that was the first sort of the key thing that we did from there, and we got them to buy into that. Not only did we get them to buy into that, they then took the lead on that and then started driving that message further. And they are the ones that actually are asking for the meetings and actually pushing information out for us on our behalf as well now. So that's how it started off from there.
Thanks for that, Rob. And I think the other thing as well there is that, you know, when you're pushing a message forward, that there needs to be constant reinforcement in relation to this. So about making sure that we're enforcing the behaviour. So this is something that we brought into the language. So any time that we were doing a review as regards any of the strikes that we may have had, or any time at all that we were talking with near misses or close calls that we were getting through, we were complimenting people on these things. The weekly briefings that we send out or are being sent out to the workforce as well include locate, mark and avoid. So it's this constant reminder that we've got in relation to what we're doing. So it's becoming, shall we say, the common language.
If I just step in there as well, so as Gerry sort of alluded to there, is that it's always focusing on the positive, and that's what we was always sort of trying to do, because health and safety is always reported as a negative. It's always you've hit this amount of service strikes. Well, actually, yes, we've hit this amount of services. However, we've had this amount of safe days, and that was the key message that we were trying to get across. And when you were coming in it from that aspect of, look, you know, you've done an outstanding job here. Yes, you know, you've hit a service here today, but actually, let's look at what you've actually done in the month. You've excavated 30 holes, 40 holes, however many. You've missed X amount of services. That was the change from sort of looking at safety in a different aspect, and where the individuals out on site, they were seeing that because safety is seen as the policeman, and it was seen once we started talking about sort of safe days, it was seen as a different aspect and a different way of coming across, that we're not there, shall we say, to catch them out, and that was the key breaker for us.
Rob, do you mind if I just ask a quick question there? When you say about the safe days and the number of services avoided, was that ever measured? It's something that's come up at USAG a number of times. Is that positive re-engagement, a positive sort of messaging of saying you've missed or you've crossed so many services or interacted with so many services successfully? Is that something you ever thought of measuring or were able to measure?
Yes, so we have started doing that now. Obviously, on some of the excavations that we dig, we might dig sort of a 200-meter excavation. So what we've done is we've tried to sort of 2 meter by 2 meter excavation and sort of calculate it that way. And on the other side of the business, we tend to do a 2 by 2 excavation. So we've started recording now how many services are actually within that excavation that we're digging. It is early days, but it's all positive stuff that we're starting to feed back on there as well. And the supply chains, the managing directors of the supply chains, they're actually taking this very, very seriously. And they're actually I have a call with each of the managing directors on a Friday, and they're sort of quite proud to say, well, we've dug this amount of excavations and we've missed this amount of services and we've passed this amount of services we've got in, and they're quite proud to sort of put up the, shall I say, the spaghetti junction excavations that they've missed or avoided so many services within there, and that's an absolute positive. And that was the biggest turning point that we had. That was when we engaged with them, with the managing directors. They took ownership of it and they started realising it, of how much people were sort of, shall I say, taking risks within their businesses and potentially putting themselves and their business and other businesses and also the client at risk. And once that message got across and was firmly believed, that's how we sort of we got the buy-in from there. And if I'm perfectly honest, it was the charter that assisted us and helped us to do that.
We struggled early on, particularly when I went there, about gauging the positive, because if you imagine digging one hole, we might dig one hole which is, as Rob says, 1 metre by 1.5 metres or something, or 2 metres. And then the next thing we might be doing at some capital work schemes, we might be digging a hole that's 200 metres long. So just by saying how many holes have you dug, it was always going to be difficult to use that as a benchmark. So we're trying to come up with a different view in relation to what we do. And obviously there's vacuum excavation, there's other ways of not digging, etc. There's pipe bursting and all other types of bits and pieces as well that we've been doing to reduce the not only the number of excavations that we're digging, but also the threat of striking underground services as well. So, Richard, if we just go on to the next slide, then, as long as people are comfortable there as regards the comms plan, if we just go on to the next slide, you can see some of the results that we've had coming through. So, Rob, do you want to pick up on these as well? And this is for utilities to begin with as a whole business.
Yeah, so I joined the company approximately 2 years ago, and as Gerry sort of alluded to in his opening sort of introduction, this is one of our key areas that we had. Now, some people might turn around and say, well, actually, your overall figures don't look that bad, bearing in mind the amount of the work we had across utilities. But actually, one service strike is one too many. So we did focus on this, and we sort of we looked at this and sort of scratched the heads of how we can sort of message across. And instead of just trying to hit it in one sort of area, we went out and we approached one contract first, and saw results from there in a very short period of time by using locate, mark, and avoid. And it sort of it worked, and it worked very, very well. And it was sort of the Severn Trent contract that was the sort of the testing ground, if you like, where for the rest of the utilities to follow. So you can see that since we actually started putting this in across and getting these messages across, you can see that sort of 18 to 19 we had a strong decline in service strikes, and then we've driven from 19 to 20, and it's just going the right way continuously all the way through. So from I can't really see the figure there. I think it's 296, is it, or 266 down to 80. It is an impressive turnaround in 2 years. Bearing in mind, on one contract we've got 1,500 people working on one contract, and that's a behavioural change for all those people. And there are other methods that we did within that sort of approach as well. So that's where we were overall on the utility figures. But if we now have a look on the next slide, unless you want to add anything, Joe.
Yeah, just one thing that you can probably see, from 2018, we were already going in the right direction. The number of strikes that we were having were reducing, but we wanted to do something. We wanted to give it a bit of an injection. We wanted to, change something. Occasionally, you might change your hairstyle. Occasionally, you might buy yourself something new, or you might redecorate a room in the house just to make it feel different, etc. We wanted to do something that was different, just to shake the tree a little bit, because we couldn't reinvent HSG 47. There was no need to. But what we had to do is we had to get the best out of it and just give something to people that they could actually remember nice and simply. Hence all of the work that we did with locate, mark, and avoid. We got 20,000 stickers that went onto helmets. They go onto the back of phones and various other bits and pieces, that people have got. So you'll see these stickers all over the place within Amey Utilities and across Amey as well. Some other contracts as well, they've made sure that they pull them together, and they've got posters. You'll see them in the back of excavators, on the side of vans, etc., etc. So we've plastered this all over the place. It's been out and about like graffiti, and it's all about getting people to remember it, because it's all about the sensory memory that I talked about earlier, about making sure that people are remembering it all of the time. So, Richard, if we just drop onto the other slide then, please. Rob, do you want to pick up on Severn Trent?
Okay, so in Water South then, which is a Severn Trent account, we were just peaked in 2018 at sort of at 85, 87, I think it was, that we peaked at there. And this is where we really sort of looked at this and we started delving more into the actual service strikes and what was actually happening, because investigation and they're guilty as charged as soon as it happened. So we took a different approach from that, and we started trying to understand, because obviously these guys and girls that go out there, they don't go out there with the intention to actually hit a service. So we looked at it from a different approach, and that approach was do we why these individuals are actually striking these? Is it pressure of work? Is it outside work influences? Now we all know that we have every day when we wake up isn't always the best day, and we might wake up in something might have happened in our sort of personal life that has an impact on and a bearing on how we work during the day. So we started looking at that and started coming from a different tact from that as well. And again, because we were so open and honest with people, they started looking at they started talking more frequently to us and more sort of open to us about sort of the way things were happening. And that sort of led then on to sort of them asking for further support. Now, everybody's done HSG 47 training, everybody has done Cat and Jenny training, but actually, do they fully understand that? And we've all got these certificates that says, yes, you know, I've been tested and I've been on this course to do this. Does that make me competent? No, it doesn't. So we went out in a number of measures from there, and it sort of really took off in 19. That's when we really sort of we had our action plan together, and that's when we really sort of struck it. But you can see there we've come from sort of 87 down to 40 now in 2 years. Again, which is 1,500 people on that contract is a remarkable turnaround.
So I as Rob was saying, I did some work around a thing called the theory of interpersonal behaviours. And this is around why people do certain things. So as Rob's talking about, you know, why does somebody get up in the morning and do a certain thing? We look through the theory of interpersonal behaviours, which looks at the environment, it looks at the social factors, it looks at the personal factors, it looks at various aspects of a behaviour with an individual, breaks it down, including the habits as regards looking at those particular aspects. So you can look in a bit more detail as regards why people are doing certain things. So I did that with the highways business for a cable strike that they had on the Birmingham contract when they had it, and we went through with the line management team and we looked at the factors that were influencing why they may have struck a particular cable on a particular day. And the guys had struck a cable at 2:45 on an afternoon on a Friday after this particular game. It was a lighting column that they'd struck, whereby they'd done 8 that morning without any problems. But once you start digging into it, this was the last one of the day. It was the last one of the week, in effect. They had to get it finished because they wanted to get across to the other side of Birmingham to where the depot was. And we talked through all of the different facets. And they then took that back to the workforce and they used that as a toolbox talk, which then helped them not to have any further service strikes. Now, please God, you know, that would stay the same. Or because what we did was we raised something different with them. So we communicated with them. And rather than saying you're all doing a bad job, it was about the fact that, well done, guys, you've not hit a cable for so many weeks, so many days, etc. And here's what we want you to learn as we're moving forward. So it was about changing the messaging and making sure that we were communicating effectively with them so they'd actually know what we were talking about. So Richard, if we just flick across onto the next slide.
Just touch a bit more on there as well, Gerry, if I can. So one of the things that probably you've all probably done this as well is when you actually look at the data. So when we looked at sort of the key areas when they were having service strikes, we identified it was predominantly just after break. So it was normally sort of 11 o'clock, sort of just after 11 o'clock, and then just after lunch break, which is when they get into their alpha state of mind and we start talking about behaviours and things from there. So in order to combat that, we started sending out text messages just after lunch break as well. Again, just reinforcing that message, which again has worked, along with some other sort of methods that we've worked from as well.
Thanks, Rob. So just across onto the slide that Richard's showing now. So what we've done is we've shared this. So if anybody goes onto the Utility Strike Avoidance Group website, all of this information is available. So we didn't want to keep this, you know, so this is available for anybody to use. There's a 4-minute, 5-minute video that's in there. So you'll see Bob and you'll see Carl on the right-hand side there. So they're part of the video that we pulled together. And, you know, Carl was our underground services champion. So very, very good at talking to the workforce, very detailed in what he's done. And you can probably see from his grey beard, etc., that he's got many years of experience under his belt as well. So we used him, and we used the knowledge that he's got, but also the language that he would use as well. So rather than somebody like me putting things together on a slide, etc., or putting things together in a video, we went through with these two guys about how we would talk to people, what we would need to do. And we kept it very, very simple and very straightforward, very visual, just to make sure that people were looking and they could see things. So all of that information is available to people should they need it. You know, so that's through the USAG website. So, you know, please use that if people wanted to through the training section, which I'm sure, I know Phil's gone now, but I'm sure he'd be pushing that as well. So those are the things that we wanted to take you through. We were fortunate as well, I think, from a Locate, Mark and Avoid perspective. We entered this into the Streetworks UK awards last year, and you know, Locate, Mark and Avoid picked up the communications. We picked up an award in relation to how we communicated with people. So that was nice to see a bit of external recognition as well. But it's great to see that we're still reducing the number of strikes that we've got, which ultimately means that not only we're protecting our own people, but you know, we're protecting the customers that we're delivering those services to as well. So I think, Richard, we can open it up for a discussion, and I'm sure Rob's happy to take any technical questions. He's the expert, not myself. But you know, if there's anything that people want to talk about, you know, then we're more than happy to listen.
That's been really interesting, Gerry and Rob. There's certainly, I've got a list of questions myself before we see the hopefully inevitable hands coming up. I think one of the things that we find in USAG discussions is that it's so easy to blame the guy that hits the cable, blame the guy in the trench, and that often it's not actually their individual behaviour, it's the culture of the company that's led to their behaviour. I just wondered if there's anything you could say on that in terms of, I'm sure you won't mention any names, but that there's surely people in your supply chain that have got a better culture or had more engagement from that senior leadership. I just wondered what impact that's had in your experience.
Rob, do you want to start?
Yeah, so that's a very, 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 very good, valid point. That so when we first sort of started in 18, as you can imagine, everybody was closed doors from there, and nobody was sort of opening up and speaking about things, and the word pressure never applied. It was never sort of discussed, and then as we started doing these, what we call these directors reviews, whereby of the account and also the director of the contractor came on to discuss and talk openly about this, and we actually engaged with the individuals that actually had the service strikes. That was a big opening point from there, and along with the signing of the USAG document as well, all these bits of sort of information helped and supported the individual out on site. And let's not be wrong, some people will sort of blatantly go out there and they will jump in a machine knowing that they shouldn't be doing that, and you know, but we take that to one side. But when we started looking at this, and it came back as yes, we're struggling, we've got pressures, we've got to get 4 jobs done today, we have to get it was never talked about. It was always a case of my people are never under pressure. But actually, when we sort of brought this in and engaged with everybody on there, and everybody was talking about it, we started looking at this and saying, well, you know, are you asking too much of these individuals? Are you actually putting too much on your gangs in order to get this? Are we, as a competent or a competent supply chain, a tier 1 contractor, putting too much work on you? Is the client putting too much work on us, and is it being fed down that way? And when we had these own grown-up conversations and we looked at this, yes, everybody put their hands up and everyone said, yeah, I've got a part to play in this. But you've got to engage with the client, because obviously they want things done because they're governed by their own people, and it's all about sort of engaging and talking with individuals as well. And yes, so it was talked about in terms of pressure.
So there's a couple of things as well for me to add there. There's if we design work differently and better and plan it better, we avoid people having to put shovels in the ground. And you know, we've seen schemes whereby where we know there's going to be a hell of a lot of services, we've used different ways of excavating. So we talked about vacuum excavation, etc., and various other things as well. So that helps. I think the other thing as well is that as Rob said, it's about the pressure, but also there's a little bit in relation to the different type of work that we might be doing. So if it's capital works or if it's planned works, you've got more of an opportunity, I think, to get things right. Whereas when it's emergency works, with the best will in the world, the guys are trying to fix a problem as quickly and as safely as they can for the benefit of the customer that they're dealing with. You know, so there are differences between planned works, in my view, and maintenance works as well. You know, where they happen to go out and do reactive work. So that would be my view on it, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much, both. I think the first hand up was Tim's. So Tim.
Hello. Good morning. Morning, Gerry. Morning, Rob.
Morning.
Thanks very much for that presentation. I'm interested in the stats that you provided in terms of why Severn Trent is half, or is accounting for half of the strikes. Is that because half of the work that Amey does is with Severn Trent, and that is purely you know, how that would expect to be, or is that because of a particular reason with Severn Trent assets? Are they badly marked? Are they, you know, they're bad plans, for example, that you come across? Any other reasons that I don't know?
No, I don't think it's Severn. I'll start off. I don't think it's Severn Trent as a client by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we use safe dig plans and various other bits and pieces. We always go to line search for everything that we need, so that there's no difference from a geographical perspective. But they are probably the biggest client with the largest workforce, as Rob's already mentioned. So, you know, we'll have, or Amey have, lots of other water contracts and power contracts and prior to that, telecommunication contracts as well. But Severn Trent, given its geographical spread, you know, it is probably the largest contract that we'd have. So, Rob, anything to add?
No, exactly those. That's exactly what I was going to say. That, you know, that we have 1,500 people working on that contract, and that was the reason why we had predominantly the most services there.
And just a follow up on that, what are you doing in 2021 to further reduce strikes?
Okay, so that's again very good. Onto there is we've got a 4-year plan. So we initially wanted to get the service strikes down. Now we started to look at the more the detail in terms of. So we've reduced our service strikes significantly, which is a fantastic achievement. But actually, what we've done is we've now hitting spike in street lighting that we're hitting. So we're focusing on the street lighting this year. That's what our main focus is on street lighting and electricals again. And what we do from that perspective is, if we do hit a service strike, then Carl Flint, who is our champion, will come along and he'll work with the teams as well. And I dare say that all of you use different sort of cable avoidance tools. Certainly myself, now I would say I was fairly competent on using cable avoidance equipment, and I would say I was pretty good at knowing how to reduce service strikes. Then I met Carl Flint, who's a different level altogether. You will all see, if you do data downloads, you will all see it'll produce a lovely, pretty dashboard for you, and it'll show you that it's been used on all different sort of on all different power supplies and all different sort of elements of it. When you actually look at the data download behind that, it just tells you a different world altogether. And that's where Carl sort of spent the time with me and ran through things with me. And you could really see, so when we're having service strikes, we could actually see then that the reasons why, and it just spelt, you know, like they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Different world. He's a completely different world, what he does, what Carl does. And when he gets involved in the service strikes and the director's reviews, he will come out and he will talk to you in a completely different manner, because he's done it. He's done the job himself. He understands it fully. So that's the key area. Focusing on service, on electrical services, particularly street lighting, but also focusing on understanding the data downloads. Instead of just seeing that pretty graph that gives 3 or 4 colors, now we look at the data behind. Understand that fully and really look at it. That then gives you a full indication of and a full insight into the reasons why they've actually hit the service in the first place. So that's the key areas that we're focusing on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. I think next we've got Adam and then Steve.
Find the mute button, the old famous mute button. Thanks, guys. Actually, what you just said there, Rob, kind of leads quite nicely into my question. Obviously, I represent one of the manufacturers in the UK, and it's always interesting to understand how organisations, especially tier one contractors, which have large supply chains, look and kind of adopt new service avoidance technology. Is it something you guys kind of are quite robust on, and how do you use new technology to kind of drive your safety for service strikes?
Do you want to mention that bit, Gerry, with Ben?
No, you carry on.
Yeah. Okay, so we have.
Sorry, Rob.
One
Thing I would say, though, to begin with, is the importance of the data. So, the new technologies and various other bits of it, the importance of the data being used effectively. So there's a guy that I know in America who talks about his professor, and the phrase that his professor used was, "Without data, you're just another schmuck with an opinion." So that was something that's kind of resonated with me about making sure we've got the right information, so that you can actually do something with it. So, we do rely a bit on the data. And I think, as Rob was saying earlier on, as regards to the downloads, and these are the important things, as long as people can use it effectively. But the other thing as well, to be fair to the supervisors and everybody that we give information to run the portal and to take information from the portal, we've got to give them time to do that. We've got to give them some information, some instruction, but also some mentoring where needs be, but also some direction when they're not doing it. So that, that's one of the key elements as well, I think, really, for me, as regards to technology. So, Rob, anything to add?
Yeah, so we are always looking to further improve things, and certainly with the Bluetooth now, and actually being able to see what's actually happening on site as well, whilst we're sort of sitting at a desk, also assists us as well. Now, we haven't rolled that out sort of across the whole piece. We're sort of bringing that in slowly. But we're just fine-tuning things a little bit more. So yes, we're always looking at different ventures and different sort of ways to improve safety as well. So if you want to have a chat with us, certainly have a chat with us offline.
Yeah, no, it's more to understand, like, as an industry with everybody on the call, the direction in which, everybody's used the Cat and Jenny for 20, 30 years. The adoption of things like ground penetrating radar, or the democratization of that technology is becoming more paramount. But we're also looking at 5-10 years into the future, and actually how do we get things like augmented reality into the hands of, like you said, people on the shop floor. That's why I've been massively impressed with this call is Richard, we talk quite regularly, is actually championing the guys that are doing the work, not the surveying guys or the engineers or any of that. It's the guys doing the work. And this is where we want to kind of help the industry as manufacturers listen to what you guys want, in terms of what do the guys on the shop floor need to help them avoid these services safely, and how can all the manufacturers, not just us, but support the industry better to achieve that goal.
I think confidence and trust is what they need, and if they've got the confidence and the trust of their employees, and the confidence to actually ring up and say, look, Adam, this isn't working. I think if you can break that barrier down, that'll help an awful lot. The other thing as well is obviously that we've taken this blame culture away, and we really have focused on that. Tried to remove the blame culture of, you've hit the service strike, it's you, and you point the finger at the individual. I'll go back to a previous life where I went to a situation whereby I won't name the company, I won't name anything about it, but I went to a situation whereby there was a team that were working, and they were putting in a continuous cable. For it was nearly 9 miles they were putting this continuous cable in for, across over the mountains, and they did a fantastic job. And for 18 months they didn't hit a service, and they came down into this industrial estate, and they came across this spaghetti junction, and they went across when I call it spaghetti junction, obviously where all the utilities are, and they hit a gas service. They hit. And the client came out, and I always go out, and the first thing I'll do is I'll go and speak to the individual, because these guys and girls do not want to come to site, and they don't want to hit a service. They come very proud. Most of them are very proud of what they do. And a lot of these guys, we have to remember, can't read and write as well. So their skill sets are fantastic. They really are. They've got through life, and a lot of them are sort of the older generation. The sort of the 50, 60-year-olds are still out there working. And you've got to remember that these people have done remarkably well in their lives, not being able to read and write, but actually do what they do. And these new techniques and these new sort of pieces of equipment that they use. But anyway, I go back to this incident. So I got out my car and I could see the team and the operator, the machine operator was there, and he was so distraught when I saw him. So I went over to see him, as I always do, and had a chat with him. I said, "You okay? Am I going to get sacked?" He said. That was his first question. Am I going to get sacked? Now that spelt to me, that sort of gave me a completely sort of, I just stood there and I said, well, why would you get sacked? You've done an absolutely fantastic job. 18 months you've been working, you have service. Yeah, but he said, look, and the client just looked round at them and he looked as if he was dirt, literally, because he was pulled out. So I went over to the client and I spoke to them and I said, do you realise that the way you're looking at that individual across over there, and I am quite outspoken, and Gerry will tell you this as well, but I will say it as it is.
Yeah.
And I went over to the client and I said, do you realise how that chap, I said, he's still going to go home tonight, okay? Do you realise how he's feeling? And you're looking at him this, and you're making this guy feel so bad. Look at the good work that he's done. 18 months without a service, and you've come here and he's hit, let's be honest, a gas service. That's what he's hit. So that was a completely different view for me. And from that moment on, I looked at things completely differently from that moment on. And that's the way I sort of, when I go to sort of investigate any incident, I look at it from, they have lives as well. And I think we forget that. I do think we forget that.
I think it's important, like you said, these are human beings that we're dealing with. Nobody goes to work to intentionally strike a service. There's always a catalogue of it. And it's refreshing to hear that kind of mentality. Obviously I've been involved in this industry for 20 years as well, and I've gone from everything from the MDs, which you hit a service, right, that's it, there's no second chances. But I can see definitely a change in the industry as well, where we are starting to shift a bit more focus onto the guys and trying to support them, which is great. So it's brilliant. Guys, I'm gonna have to shoot off the call myself now, but thank you very much for this morning. It's been really, really useful, and hopefully see you all again soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Gerry, did you just have something? Were you going to say something then?
Yeah, I just think following on with what Rob said, what we've tried to do as well is to encourage people to report things. They do anyway. You can't get away with not reporting a service strike because everybody knows about it. Somebody's going to complain about the fact that they've lost a connection to a house, to an estate, or whatever else it may be. But it's really around recognition, and reward about all of the guys who are doing the good stuff. So rather than just focusing, as Rob said, on the one negative issue, it's about congratulating them and saying thank you to them. So it's about some reinforcement of the right behaviours rather than just vilifying them just because they may have done one thing wrong in 18 months.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So the next question there is Stephen.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for the presentation. It was really good. Just on the statistics on it, have you considered looking at, because you're recording either number of services passed or excavations dug, have you considered creating from that like an accident frequency rate from it? We did a similar exercise a few years ago, and we were taking it by number of excavations carried out, and we landed round about, it was for roughly every 2,000 excavations we dug, we would strike something, and that gave you quite a good sort of frequency rate to base it on. And then that way you know whether your strike rate has actually increased or decreased. Because one of the arguments just for purely recording the amount of strikes that you have is if your work rate goes down, or your workload goes down, should I say, then your strike rate will go down as well. And it potentially gives you a false positive. So that it looks like you've struck less, but it's actually just because you're actually working less.
Yeah, there are lots of different angles to this, and I think for me as well, we struggled, as I mentioned before, to try and come up with what the right measure should be, given the amount of work and the type of work that we were doing. Interestingly as well, one of the things that I did with the board, the executive team that I sat on at Amey, I never wanted to give them a frequency. because I just talked about the numbers, because one service that they were striking was too many. So I never let them off the hook from an operational perspective about saying, oh, well, our frequency rate is different and we've got a better frequency rate than all of the other contracts because, you know, we've got more people. I wasn't interested in that. I said, if you're hitting a service, you could be killing people. So I used it on a, should we say, on a negative way to my advantage to try and, you know, get some change in regards to what we were doing.
But to answer that question, Gerry and I, yes, we measure that to see our performance, but from a corporate perspective, as in terms of the exec board, yes, Gerry did it from that approach, but we would talk about it, and yes, it is a measure that we look at. We actually look at it week by week now, as well as month and as well as annually as well. So, but we don't publicise it. We just look at it and gives us sort of an overarching view of where we are and how we're doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that any strike is sort of not what we want out there, but it is one of the ones that we discuss it frequently at the likes of the USAG meetings, and it's trying to get that level of consistency out there so that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet and try and see what everybody else is doing and see what the best sort of approach to it is.
Yeah, it's for a behavioural side of perspective. Yes, we use it. We can use it for that to discuss things, and as I say, it's all about the positives we're trying to focus on, and that's the way we look at it. So anything that's a positive, we promote it that way. Anything that's negative, it will go to sort of be sort of spoken at the board level to say, look, this is the negative side of it. However, this is what we're doing. So yeah, we do record it, yes, but we don't publicise that out.
Great, so thank you. I think we've probably got time for one last question. Just conscious of time, I'm just going to share a slide whilst that question's going on, just so you can have a quick look at that. But yeah, I think Katie, I think you had a question.
Hi, yeah, just a quick question following up on the statistics in terms of and the positivity. Is there any way of actually introducing step changes? So when you've actually taken an action to reduce strikes, you introduce in your as a marker, we've done this, and then you monitor that after you've done that change, and then you can actually report up either to the client or to the employer, this is what made a difference, because that will then encourage investment.
Yeah,
yes,
we've done that. Yeah, we've done that simplistically, just with the two slides that we showed. You know, we talked there about, you know, the introduction of locate, market, avoid, and there's no reason why Amey or any other organisation can't do a similar thing. Then, you know, and it's really just about signposting dates and times, isn't it? Really, where you put the intervention in place to see what the results are.
And would that really be a partnership between, say, project management and, you know, the line managers up there, and also bringing in the people at the front of this, and then working together in order to say what's working, make this change, monitor it, and make more change? Because sometimes it can be a bit dogged in tradition and legacy, and people are reluctant to go to new things like technology because of the cost.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I was going to say, the more that we involve the workforce with the solutions, the more buy-in we're going to be getting. So, you know, but Rob, by all means, carry on.
Yeah, so Kate, just to the key thing is the managing directors of the supply chain. We meet with them on every Friday. I have a one-to-one with them every Friday, and we also have an open forum as well. So we talk about sort of individualities with them, but we also talk on an open forum as well. And they will then feed back if there's any concerns that they have. They will feed that back. My team will go out and spend time with them, with the supervisors and also the operational colleagues as well that are working as well. The project managers, again, we work with them as well. So the buy-in is coming from the shop floor supervisors, project managers, and it's also coming from the client, from the supply chains managing directors, through to their sort of operational leads, through to their sort of to their site teams as well. So it's working in tandem all the time. We're reinforcing the message, and it's not about this blame culture, and that's the key thing that we're getting across speak to us if you have an issue. Then please speak to us. And through we use AVA, which is our reporting mechanism. You can see now that just from that alone, that the amount of sort of feedback from the site teams is telling us that that they are open and honest. So where we were getting the pressures, a lot of people were reporting pressures. That's gone now. That doesn't happen. It's more a case of getting down to the real root grounds of things. And from that data there that we look at, that then plots us where we're going to go to next.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Supported with Carl, just along with Carl supporting going out there as well. And sort of, if we do have a service strike, what we'll do is we'll take, or randomly, we'll just take a team away from where they're working, take them across the road and say, right, show us what you'll do. Show us what you'll do. So we're reinforcing that message again. So they haven't got any plans, and they'll just go and sort of plot out where there are some services within that area and just go through. And we'll do that randomly. Excellent.
Thank you.
Lovely. Well, that's great. And I can't see if we've got any more hands up because I'm sharing my screen now, but I think we've probably better draw it to a close now. Gerry, Rob, just to say thank you very much indeed. I think it's been a fantastic session. And yeah, you can see from the questions there's been a lot of engagement across the room, so to speak. Certainly, I felt that there's been a lot of what you've done has been based on data. You know, from what we've just compiled, the strike report, we're absolutely sure that you need data to make good decisions. So yeah, it's really great to see how you've used data internally to make such a big impact, but also the communication and empathy of understanding people's positions and how they feel and all the pressures on them. I think just two sort of small things out of a long list that I've got from the session had, and I'm sure everyone else has. We've had some lovely comments in the chat. Any sort of final thoughts, Gerry or Rob, before we close? Anything you'd like to say? Or
I think for me, you know, this is work in progress. You know, we're communicating with the people. We put a particular plan together. You know, this one shouldn't be the finished article. You know, the same as I've mentioned earlier on. You know, we did something, or Amey did something in relation to locate, mark, and avoid. It would probably need another injection of something different. You know, in a year's time, 2 years' time, whatever else it may be, but probably based on the same theme. But you know, the more that we can do to engage with the people and ask them how they want to be communicated with, you know, it's very important, because the message that I send out, although I might feel as though it's a very decent message, that might be received differently. So, you know, if you're communicating with people, you've got to make sure it's in a language and a format and a presentation style, etc., that actually hits the mark with them, rather than just what you feel as though is what they want to be listening to.
I suppose my final comment is that, you know, I'm very pleased that the comments that we're getting back is great, and it's very rewarding to hear that and see that. If anybody wants to sort of speak to myself or Gerry, please feel free to do that, and I'll give pointers wherever I can point out. Not a problem at all. You know, it's something that I'm very passionate about as well. So I'm more than happy to support and give any I can help out as well.
That's very much appreciated, you both. Thank you very much indeed. So I think just probably draw it to close there. If anyone's got any feedback or wants Gerry's or Rob's details, please feel free to contact us. We really would like some feedback and any ideas for I think we just shared the next sessions, slightly different twist on the next one on how to engage with the agricultural sector, and then looking at how to get the best out of plans of the next one. So a little bit of some different types of ideas around the sort of safe digging angle, but hopefully interesting to all. But again, please do get in touch and let us know what went well for you and what we can improve on. To me, I think Gerry, Rob, thanks very much again. I think it's been great, and thank you very much for everyone for dialing in.
Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Okay, bye bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.